Woke up this morning at 2 a.m. Not unusual for me. Stayed awake for several hours. Not unusual for me. But if he's going to lead me to something in the realm of prophecy that I didn't know, it almost always happens in that period of time. And this morning, I hit the jackpot. It was a fluke in terms of how I stumbled on it, but I think it was directed. I really do, because one of the things, two things inside the same verse, one of them is a game changer. We'll put that second in this video. Normally I like to do just focus on one thing per video. We're going to do both today. The first thing, not a game changer so much as it's just oh, really? Well, isn't that interesting? Didn't know that. And it involves the Revelation 12 sign, the most spectacular sign that we are ever going to get as the church inside the prophecy of Jesus, who said his coming, before his coming, there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. There may be several of those signs. None will be the equal to the Revelation 12 sign, because it's the only sign that we can know for a fact is authenticated by God, because it comes right off the pages of the Bible, right out of the book of Revelation, and we can know exactly what it's pointing to. It's very similar to the Bethlehem star. Those magi knew what it meant, were looking for it, and knew where to go, and that sign delivered. The Messiah was there in Bethlehem. The Revelation 12 sign is going to deliver for us. What it's pointing at is going to happen in our lifetime. Otherwise, it becomes a worthless sign. Nobody will be interested in it. It'll be a giant disappointment, and future generations won't even pay attention to it. That is not going to be the outcome for the Revelation 12 sign. Now, before I show you what I saw this morning, I want to thank a viewer who pointed out, Stan, you're leaving out the conception comet part of the Revelation 12 sign experience. He's exactly right. I forgot all about that. When they discovered it, Scott Clark and others started looking at it on Stellarium, where you go to look at all things sun, moon, and stars. You will not see comets, because comets have to be turned on manually, and you have to tell the program which comet do you want to track. Well, people are smart and people are clever, and eventually someone turned on the right comet and showed that right before the king planet, I'm going to refuse to call it Jupiter, right before the king planet entered into the womb of Virgo in November of 2016 to begin its 9.5, almost 10-month gestation period before it was birthed in September of 2017, just before it entered Libra or Virgo's womb, a comet came flying out of the constellation Leo and pinged her womb. Boom! It touched into her womb, and then almost immediately Jupiter was inside the womb. And the person who discovered it calls it did I mention that I didn't get much sleep last night? Yes, the conception comet. Now, you can see those videos just by going to YouTube and searching conception comet. It's just another amazing facet of this amazing sign. We are a blessed generation to have seen it. I'll mention what it's pointing to after I show you what I saw this morning. I was going into the Greek interlinear for some other purpose, but it happened to be in the same verse as there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. Now, the interlinear, in case you don't know, most of you probably do, is just the official Greek text, all those Greek words, word by word by word, with a translation and the Greek number for that word that you can get further information on. And it shows things that, someone like me, if I were to say I was a Greek novice, that would be overstating my real level by about 10 times. I don't even rise to the level of novice. but it will give you the tense of the word if it's a verb and the form and all of that. So I happened to be scaling down verse 25 of Luke 21, and there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and look what it says for stars, constellation. Constellation. Well, wait a minute. Nobody ever told me that the word for star could be interpreted as constellation, but there it is. And so I looked at the number and looked up the Strong's Greek word definition for that, and right there it tells you one of the definitions, one of the very first definitions, is constellation. And that's when the word is even used in the singular form as it is here in this Strong's definition. In the Greek interlinear, it's the plural form. What I'm trying to say is, even when the word for star, astrum, I believe it is, even when that word is singular, it can mean constellation. But even more so when it's in the plural, which is in Luke 21:25. Imagine, if you will, how the reception of the Revelation 12 sign may have increased greatly if we had interpreted that as there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the constellations. But nobody did. Do you know why? No translator. They all stuck with star or stars. Do you know why? Because they didn't want their translation to appear to be supporting astrology, which, of course, appreciating God's constellations is not astrology. Astrology is, of course, the corruption of astronomy. Constellations, at least 2 constellations, are mentioned in the Old Testament. As a matter of fact, just so you know, when I read Josephus, that was my, hey, some guys, get their middle-age warning and they want to climb Mount Everest to prove they're still a man and, accomplish something. Mine was, I'm going to read Josephus, all of it, 900 plus pages. Well, I skipped about 20 or 30 or 40 pages, but other than that, I read the whole thing. He was a priest in the temple. He was a man's man. He was an amazing guy. And he points out that the 12 loaves of showbread inside the temple, they were replaced every week. And by the way, there was a miracle every week. At the end of the week, they would cut up the bread and the priests would all take the bread home, and it was still as fresh as it was when it first came out of the oven. He tells us those 40 or 50-pound loaves each all represented the 12 constellations of the Mazzaroth. Now, he was not into astrology, but they all understood the importance of God's constellations. If everybody had this knowledge, and if that word had been interpreted constellation, which it could very well have been, the reception for the Revelation 12 sign would have been much warmer than it was. This is one of the reasons the church turned its back on it. Oh, now you're dabbling in astrology. No, we aren't. No, we weren't. So what is the Revelation 12 sign pointing to? The Revelation 12 sign is pointing directly to a series of visions beginning with verse 1 of chapter 12 that John was having. The first thing he saw was a vision of a woman in heaven, clothed with the sun, 12 stars above her head, moon at her feet. Now, he saw an actual woman. He did not see the constellation Virgo like we saw, because he sees the woman later running into the wilderness, being carried by wings of eagles, and she's evading the water being spewed out of the dragon's mouth. He's seeing something in vision world that we saw in real time, real world material. Just like the people back in the days of the Medo-Persian Empire. Daniel saw it in vision world. They saw it in real time. They saw the real thing. We saw what that vision was pointing to. The vision we saw was pointing back to that series of visions. Now think about it. The vision that John had of that woman giving birth to this male child, whether it was the Messiah or the church, we'll leave that alone for now, or both, was history. That had already happened. That completed the first vision. Then he sees another vision. He sees a second sign. This one is about the dragon. It too is history. It has rebelled, and it's taken a third of the angels with it. he is being shown this backstory of what is about to happen. There hasn't been an event happening yet in the chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. We're seeing this age-old dilemma of Satan versus the woman and her seed, which began back in Genesis. The next thing is what we're supposed to take note of, and war broke out in heaven. And that is the one thing that Jesus links to his coming in all three versions of the Olivet Discourse. He calls it the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory, and he will send his angels out to gather his called out ones, his elect. He is not coming for his church until there is war in heaven. The Revelation 12 sign is telling us that war, that unbelievable war, is coming in our time. And the Lord tells us, when you see it begin to happen, lift up your head, because he is at the door. Your redemption has arrived. It would be difficult to overstate the importance of the Revelation 12 sign and the responsibility that is conveyed to all of us because of it, and the blessing that it is bestowing on this age, on this generation. People throughout history long to have seen something like this, a sign that the Lord is near. And the Revelation 12 sign is going to deliver on that. All right, a couple weeks ago, I talked about there's one thing in the Olivet Discourse that to me is hard to figure out if it's figurative or literal. The sea and the waves roaring. Let's read it in context. And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the constellations, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, comma, the sea and the waves roaring, semicolon. And then men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Now, I saw those words, the sea and the waves roaring, in the New King James Version. The New King James Version doesn't provide a link to, and on earth distress of nations with perplexity. So it could appear to be a figure of speech. The nations are oftentimes in the Old Testament seen as the sea. The sea in the Old Testament is oftentimes the sea, the ocean. So it kind of read to me like what Jesus was saying is the Gentile nations are all going to be, perplexed about things. And then a figure of speech, the sea and the waves roaring. In other words, the Gentile nations are all up in arms about something because of the way it was written. And I said, so it could be a figurative phrase here. If it's literal, then we're looking at something totally different. And then I happened to see this same verse in the English Standard Version. What a difference it makes. Listen to this. And on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. Well, that's quite a bit different. That's saying there really is going to be a literal roaring of the sea and waves, and that is what is causing the perplexity of the nations, trying to figure out why this is happening. And I was like, no, wait a second. I have a lot of respect for the English Standard Version, but I need some support here. There is support uniformly throughout all translations, practically all, with the exception of really old translations like the New King James Version, which I like, and the King James and the Geneva Bible. But the modern versions are all seeing the connection. Watch this. The ASV, the American Standard Version. And upon the earth distress of nations in perplexity for the roaring of the sea and the billows, the waves, the billows being waves. So again, there's the connection. Holmes Christian Bible. And there will be anguish on the earth among nations, bewildered by the roaring sea and waves. The New American Standard Bible. And on the earth distress among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves. A real, literal event. The NIV. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Again, the connection. The New Living Translation, and here on earth the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and strange tides. The Revised Standard Version, and upon the earth distress of nations in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves. Now, when this, and there's many more translations that agree with that. I just picked some of the more popular versions. But when that many Greek scholars say there is a connection between the perplexity of the nations and the sea and the waves roaring, which turns it into a real event, there has to be something to it. So once again, I went to the Greek interlinear to see if I could spot that connection. Now, I'm just a moron with a microphone, especially when it comes to Greek, so I have to be careful. But even I could see, as we go through that verse, word by word, there is roaring of resounding. In other words, perplexity because of the noise and the turmoil and the roaring of the waves in the sea. That's the connection. That's what all those Greek scholars apparently saw with much greater insight and ability to, communicate what I just tried to tell you. There is a connection between the perplexity of the nations because they see a real event. This is exciting to me. This is very exciting to me because this is going to be another worldwide sign. The Revelation 12 was a worldwide sign. There's another one coming. Something strange is going to begin happening to the seas and the oceans on the planet to the point that the nations are noticing and they are concerned. Why I'm excited about it. First of all, what could be causing it? You know what could be causing it? Here's a guess. Please put this in just a guess mode. War in heaven. War in heaven has begun, and the first manifestation of that is somehow it's affecting the tides and the seas of our planet. Does that sound far-fetched? Yes, but we know we're going to see it in the heavens. We are told men's hearts failing as they see the things coming on the earth because the powers of the heavens have been shaken. So it's going to manifest itself at least in the heavens. Perhaps it's manifesting initially in the oceans and the seas. That's a guess. Maybe it's something entirely different. But because of the way it's worded, the nations are perplexed. It sounds like it's going to buy us a little more time, and that's what I'm excited about. Maybe this could be the thing that wakes up the sleepy church. Maybe this is the thing that gets all those great guys out of the Dallas Theological Seminary who have their rotten, erroneous timelines of prophecy to throw them out and go, we need to get back into the Olivet Discourse because what we're witnessing all around the world was predicted in the Olivet Discourse. And maybe they'll see, you know what's next? The powers of the heavens are about to be shaken, and it's about to scare the crap out of everybody but his church. And suddenly there's a worldwide revival of prophecy and understanding in the church that he is coming. And we need to get ready. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Along with perhaps an end time harvest to match that. Even more wonderful. But the moment we see that, I can't wait for the first newscast. A number of nations are concerned about the oceans along their coastlines behaving very strangely. We've asked our science editor to join us tonight to discuss. When I see that, I'm going to jump on here and I'm going to make a suggestion. Now, I don't have any sway. I don't carry much sway at all. But what I'm going to suggest when we see that and Christians begin waking up to the fact that we are seeing the last sign before the powers of the heavens are shaken, and it's time for us to look up. I'm going to suggest that we look at the sixth seal. When the Gentile church is standing in heaven, they're holding palm branches. Now, that's probably related to the Feast of Tabernacle, which we'll talk about as we get closer to that, if we get closer to that. But what I'm going to suggest is if we're holding them in heaven, and since he's about to show up, let's start carrying them around right now. And you begin at a grocery store and you see somebody else with a palm branch, and one would say, Hosanna, and the other person would say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And that would just, that would make the world so mad. We've got a serious climate change problem happening on our globe, and you're acting like it's a sign that your Jesus is about to show up. Yeah, that's right, he is. You bet, that's right, he is, because that's what they're going to say. You know why we got roaring seas and waves, Stan? Because you like New York strips and you like to barbecue them. You know what's worse? Your sister likes ribeyes and she barbecues them. That's even worse. And you know what's even worse than those two? It's your sister's friend Carol, and she drives a big old Cadillac. That's what they'll be saying. And we'll be saying, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I am changing my opinion on this. This is dramatic change. This is something every watchman and every watchwoman should start watching for, because he said it. But Stan, you're saying that he can't show up today. I'm not saying it. He is. Look at what he said carefully. Lord, the disciples asked him, what will be the signs of your coming? What will be the things that precede, so we'll know you are about to show up in victory? And he will be showing up in victory, because he just threw Satan out of heaven and out of the heavens and put him under house arrest here on planet Earth. And he will continue forth from that point forward. But here is the answer to that question. What are the signs of your coming? Number one, there will be signs in the sun and the moon. Okay, I'll say stars, but I really think it should be constellations, which we've seen. We may see more, but we can put a check mark there. And on earth, distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. They are going to begin acting up before he comes. That's going to happen according to him. The nations of the world will take notice of that. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, straighten up, raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. There are things that have to happen. They are beginning to happen. The Revelation 12 sign is predicting war in heaven in our time. That's the third sign. First sign, sun, the moon, and constellations. Second sign, sea and the waves roaring. Last sign, the sign, when you see that, raise up your head, the powers of the heavens being shaken. Let the sea and the waves roar. Behold, the bridegroom comes.